There's a scene in the classic 90s British film Trainspotting in which the character Sick Boy reveals his unifying theory of life.
Well, at one point you've got it, then you lose it, and it's gone forever. Georgie Best, for example, had it, lost it. Or David Bowie, or Lou Reed.
This way of thinking often permeates music fandom in particular, and although there's undoubtedly some truth to it, I think it's a narrative we often buy into way too quickly. You don't just have a talent or a skill and wake up one day and lose it. People who have the ability to create something of value don't turn 30 or 40 or 50 or whatever and out of the blue lose that ability. Yes, artists can find themselves in the right place in the right time and find themselves in tune with the zeitgeist, and so for a period may resonate more deeply with their audience or more widely to a greater number of people, but they're only human, and like everyone else, they're subject to burnout. But by and large, if a creative spark is there, I think it can be nurtured and rekindled. And one of the greatest creative rekindlings of recent times, in my opinion, is the rejuvenation of a band whose later work still captures the majesty and murky drama they're synonymous with all the precision, power and expertise Renton showed in Trainspotting with that pellet gun. This is why Suede book the Sick Boy theory. Welcome to 2020 Sound, the channel where we take a look back at some of the more overlooked aspects of indie and alternative rock history. If that sounds like something you'd like to watch more videos about, then do please subscribe. Now, you may wonder how a band that were the face of Brit Pop at the genesis of that movement in 1993 might be considered remotely overlooked. A group who had #1 albums, won awards, and even famously appeared on the front cover of Melody Maker with the headline, "The Best New Band in Britain," before they'd even released a note of music. Well, whilst the imperial phase of their youth got lots of plaudits, much of the music they've released since their reunion in 2010 doesn't get talked about with quite as much reverence. And that's a shame, because there's a strong case for much of their most recent output standing toe-to-toe in quality with their initial run of music. Plus, it's also worth bearing in mind that, like their contemporaries the Manic Street Preachers, whilst they had a significant profile in the UK, they were almost completely overlooked in the US, despite making some of the most tremendous guitar pop of that decade. Something that almost certainly wasn't helped by them having to use the painfully crap moniker the London Suede to avoid copyright issues across the pond. If you do fall into that category of being unfamiliar with the group's salad days, then it's important to know that for most of the 90s, for many fans of this kind of music, Suede, to use Sick Boy's terminology, undoubtedly had it. That combination of talent and timing and tapping into a certain mood to establish themselves as one of the first truly prominent British guitar bands of the decade. And what a decade it was for them, not just in terms of their success and the dramas within the group, but also in terms of the sheer fun they must have had. The anecdotes this band has from the years before they even signed a record deal are priceless indie pub quiz factoids and sort of reflect the weight that they were going to carry in the names of some of the characters they managed to pull into their orbit. Anecdotes like Justine Frischmann originally playing guitar in the band and being in a relationship with singer Brett Anderson as well before she went on to greater fame fronting Elastica, not to mention a relationship with Blur's Damon Albarn, which contributed to the original Britpop soap opera rivalry. Yes, Oasis and Blur's tumultuous relationship may be more famous, but it was Suede and Blur who clashed homes first. Then there's the fact that Mike Joyce from the Smiths was the band's original drummer. I love the quote he gave The Guardian. "I was browsing through the Melody Maker and found an ad for a drummer in the Mike Joyce style. I had to answer it. I phoned the number, but the band said that it would be hard because they were from London, to which I said, well, I've worked with bands outside Manchester before. They said, well, are you any good? I said, I'm better than Mike Joyce, because I've improved since those records you will have heard." He eventually parted ways with them because he didn't want his past to overshadow their future and was replaced by Simon Gilbert. And according to Far Out magazine, it was their manager at the time who was instrumental in helping the band find Gilbert, their manager at the time being Ricky Gervais. Bassist Matt Osman told Time Out, "He was always a really sarky bugger, he really was. I'm really glad he's a comedian rather than a manager because he was a manager." Matt Osman is also the brother of TV game show presenter Richard Osman. Honestly, you could pretty much have an entire music round dedicated to this band's connections. They're like the Kevin Bacon of Britpop. So yes, the band's story in the 90s had memorable moments and characters, and they seem to have remarkable luck with music paper wanted ads, recruiting not just Joyce in this way, but also original guitarist and co-songwriter Bernard Butler. But all that aside, what made the band so special is the music, and what truly made them stand out initially was the depth of quality of the Anderson-Butler writing partnership. Suede's debut single may get my vote for the greatest single of all time. On the A side, you've got the stomping catwalk prowl of the Drowners, establishing the band's carnal glam rock strut. Then on the B side, you've got what may actually be my favourite Suede song, full stop, the towering, almost shoegazing shimmer of To the Birds. And the swooning, warped pop of My Insatiable One. He's my insatiable one. Two songs which trounce most bands' A-sides and could have easily been singles in their own right. It's an unbelievable opening statement that propelled them to prominence because, in my opinion, they basically hit their peak straight off the bat. And that's not to say that it was all downhill from there. I just mean that for me, they achieved greatness with their first swing, and it's a greatness they'd returned to many times. Suede were an incredible B-sides band in the 90s. Some of their best songs from the achingly beautiful The Living Dead, to the cocksure swagger of Young Men, were found tucked away on singles, and their first three albums in particular are a tour de force. 1993's eponymous debut cemented the Bowie meets Smiths hybrid that's the foundation of their whole approach, and 1994's Dogman Star built on that foundation whilst the Architects themselves fell apart, Butler leaving the band before the album was even finished. But the resulting record is, to my ears, a beautiful mash of ambition, the sound of a band reaching for a level of drama beyond what just four guys in a rehearsal room can actually achieve, and in the process chucking not just the kitchen sink into the mix, but the whole plumbing system, almost as if they knew the songwriting partnership was going to end there, so they're going to indulge their every instrumental idea before the record ends. Rolling Stone described Dogman Star as one of the most pretentious albums ever released, and it's certainly very indulgent in places, but that's all part of its charm, and it distinguished the group from the Brit Pop bands that followed in their wake. None of the others, at least at this stage, were quite so theatrical and grand. By the time you reach Black or Blue and Still Life, the grime of the subject matter is set to such gloriously over-the-top music that it's like listening to Les Mis being performed by the cast of Trainspotting. With the loss of Butler, you'd expect the band to completely fall apart, and there are those who think they were never as good again. But with the recruitment of a 19-year-old Richard Oakes on guitar and Neil Codlin on keys, the band proved that they were more than just the sum of their parts, creating Coming Up in 1996, a sparkling album of 10 guitar pop bangers that to this day fizz and burst into life like a can of Coke that's been shaken up for the sugary melodies to erupt down your ear holes. After the sprawl of Dogman Star, Coming Up was about refinement. It's lean, there's no excess, it's like a jukebox going for the jugular, with more hooks than you could shake Liam Gallagher's tambourine at. And in the Britpop arms race for writing massive anthems, the new 5-piece Suede showed that their arsenal was intimidatingly well stocked. Those first three albums and the B-sides of that era are what I think the band's reputation is built on. They barely made any creative missteps, boasted consistently strong songwriting, and honed a distinctive style and sound that positioned them very much as a leading band of that era. But it all started to go wrong right around the time Anderson wrote one of the worst lyrics ever written in Savoir-Faire. She lived in the house, she's stupid as a mouse. 1999's Head Music still has some enjoyable songs on it, but it doesn't hold a candle to their previous albums, and sounds like a band running out of steam and losing sight of who they are. Anderson had fallen into drug addiction, Codlin began suffering with chronic fatigue syndrome, and the band began to fall apart. Codlin left in 2001 and the group split up in 2003, a year after the ironically titled A New Morning drove the final nail into the band's coffin as pretty much Exhibit A in Sick Boy's argument that they
had it, lost it.
Or at least, so it appeared at the time. The rest of the decade saw Anderson release a few solo albums and the tantalising reunion of he and Butler as the Tears, their solo album from 2005, boasting some strong moments. But by and large, there was no indication that Suede had any interesting chapters yet to be written. But the boys had unfinished business, a burning desire to rectify a tarnished reputation and prove that there was still life in the old dog man stars yet. Anderson told The Guardian, "I felt our myth was quite tattered when we decided to reform. We split up on a very low note because the last album was a bit of a f***up. I think that seriously damaged our legacy. A lot of us reforming was about setting the record straight." And their most recent run of albums well and truly does that. For Christmas in 2018, my girlfriend bought me a copy of The Blue Hour, and I've still no idea why. We must have talked about Suede at some point, but I'd shown no interest in any of their new stuff. Like a lot of people do, I'd consigned a band I used to enjoy to the past because I'd written them off, Sick Boy style, after that ignominious ending. I'd stopped paying attention and was no longer being spoon-fed reasons to pay attention. So I wasn't expecting much, to be honest. And then I pressed play and heard As One, and I couldn't help but smile. They weren't just back, they were resplendent in this one brooding epic of an album opener. They displayed all the audacity I loved them for in the first place. As a British indie band coming from a country that can make taking the Olympic sport, you've got to have balls like watermelons to stick the City of Prague Philharmonic Orchestra and what sounds like a choir of chanting monks on a song that comes across like Bowie's soundtrack in The Omen, and to do it all without a shred of irony. The whole album captures the band's magic wonderfully. Even without Bernard Butler back in the frame, they sound very much like the Suede of Dogman's start, producing this cinematic music, telling these tales of fear and loss and hope and romance set in urban wastelands, but they're older, wiser, tighter, and sonically, I don't think they've ever sounded better, sharper, or more powerful than on these last two albums in particular. Listening back, 2013's comeback album Bloodsports was a strong collection of songs, but in hindsight feels like them refinding their feet creatively. But it's 2016's Night Thoughts and 2018's The Blue Hour where they stride and suck you into the drama of their music. They're proper albums, by which I mean you can just put them on and luxuriate in the themes. The former running the gamut of life, death, love, anguish and despair, according to director Roger Sargent, who even made a feature film to accompany it, and the latter being about the terrors of childhood, according to Anderson. And in true Suede fashion, they both boast some massive anthems you can single out and enjoy bouncing around the room to, from Outsiders to Beyond the Outskirts. Clearly, a lot of acts burn out and have a hot streak which they never quite reach again. But as much as the Sick Boy theory says about the uphill battle of staying relevant as you age, it also says a huge amount about the quirks of being a music fan. Like the overwhelming influence of nostalgia and our tendency to put the music of our youth on a pedestal because it's tied up with such potent moments in our own lives. If we encountered exactly the same music at a different age, it likely wouldn't affect us anywhere near as deeply. Or like the sheer vastness of stuff that's out there to listen to and our spare time dwindling as we get older, meaning we grow all the more unforgiving. If someone releases a dud, we may never give them another chance. Truth is, you should never truly write off a great band or artist because they're great for a reason. And I think creativity is like a plant. Given the right circumstances and conditions and care, I think a person's creativity can still produce the goods. It's about finding those conditions when they change as your life changes and treasuring them. Like Matt Osman told Time Out, nowadays when we play live or in the studio, I'm so aware of the precariousness of it, the preciousness of it. Coming back to that, I think we work harder and the gigs are better. And having watched them just a few months back, I can vouch for that. They haven't lost a step, and even in his 50s, Brett Anderson remains one of the greatest frontmen around, an absolute dynamo who can have an audience eating out of the palm of one hand while swinging a microphone around his head with the other. Suede, ladies and gentlemen.
Had it, lost it.
Got it back, and absolutely smashed it. Thanks for watching. Let me know any other acts who you think book the Sick Boy theory in the comments, and if you'd like to watch more videos along the lines of overlooked music from indie and alternative rock history, then do please subscribe.